Friday, September 8th, 2017 is the last day that Taylor Wright is known to be alive. She was with this defendant, Ashley MacArthur, and they were supposed to be going to the bank. Taylor Wright was never seen alive again.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. The mother of an Escambia County woman who was murdered has some very strong words for the woman now charged in her death.
The body of 33-year-old Taylor Wright was discovered yesterday on Britt Road in Cantonment.
This case is about a woman who worked as a private investigator, digging into people's lives, getting to the bottom of mysteries and infidelities, and ultimately forging herself a career being able to solve the most unbelievable crimes. But in September of 2017, she left her home with her best friend for an incredibly important reason, but she was never seen alive again. This is Red Rum, stories about the true victims of crime. Taylor Wright was born on the 23rd of April 1984. She lived in South Carolina, where she did a degree in criminal justice. In 2003, Taylor met police officer Jeff Wright and the two began dating. Taylor went on to train at the police academy in Jacksonville, and in 2008 she qualified and she and Jeff got married. They ended up having a baby boy together, Drake. She decided during this time in her life when things were changing that she wanted to switch careers. She'd always been interested in investigations, hence her working as a police officer, but by this point she honed in on exactly what she wanted to do, and so she retrained as a private investigator. After she left the police, her and Jeff's relationship became strained, and after 10 years of marriage, the couple decided to start divorce proceedings. She and Jeff were not on the best of terms when they broke up, and the divorce was messy. Taylor was attempting to rebuild her life without Jeff, but they shared a son together, and so it was tricky because she wasn't able to just get a fresh start. She had this tie, and her and Jeff had to figure out how to co-parent successfully together. Navigating life separately as single parents was hard, but they were determined to do it for their son, Drake. Also, during this period, Taylor decided to move, so she left South Carolina and moved to Pensacola, Florida. She also started working there more and more as a private investigator, picking up regular work. Pensacola is described as having glorious white sands, clear warm water, wonderful views, great fun, miles and miles of beach. Over a quarter of the households in Pensacola are home to families, and it really is a pleasant place with lots of nice beaches and nice weather. Taylor was incredibly social, and so when she moved to Pensacola, she didn't have any problem in making a brand new group of friends. And one of the people she met and became incredibly close to was a woman called Ashley Britt MacArthur. Ashley and Taylor got on well, and by 2017, they'd been friends for a little over a year, and they actually, by this point, were calling themselves best friends. Ashley had given Taylor a key to her house. She'd look after Taylor's son on occasion, and they even took a trip to New Orleans together. Around this time, Taylor had also downloaded some dating apps and she'd started talking to people on them. And it wasn't too long before she started talking to a woman who was working as a school teacher, Cassandra Waller. The pair met up, they went on a date, and they got on incredibly well. And it wasn't long before Cassandra asked Taylor to be her girlfriend. The relationship, however, wasn't smooth sailing. Although it is reported that Taylor was very happy with Cassandra in some respects, she actually ended up cheating on her, and Cassandra found out, and the two spoke about it. Cassandra was obviously very upset, she was heartbroken, but they decided that they did have sincere feelings for each other, and Taylor said that she was really sorry and she didn't know why she'd done it, but she wanted to be with Cassandra, so they decided to make a go of things. During this time, Taylor was still in constant communication with her ex-husband Jeff. Obviously they're co-parenting Drake, but also they were having issues within the divorce because of money. In fact, Taylor and Jeff still shared a bank account together. They had a joint bank account, and inside of that bank account there was over $100,000. Taylor had been worried that Jeff was going to move all of the money out of that joint account and leave her with nothing, and so she decided to get there first first, and she actually withdrew $100,000 from the account without Jeff's knowledge. This wasn't something that she was allowed to do. It was a joint account. It was both of their money, and she needed permission to do that, which obviously she didn't have. And when Jeff found that out, he was very, very upset and angry and told her that she needed to replace it. She needed to return the money immediately. And if she didn't, he was going to contact the police. And when Taylor didn't, he did contact the police. He got them involved and an investigation was started. And Taylor did know that it was illegal to take that money. She knew that there was no way she could put it in her own bank accounts because it would easily be traced there. And so she decided that instead of doing that, she was going to ask a couple of her close friends to look after the money temporarily for her. It's not totally clear what Taylor had planned to do in the long run, but for now she had decided to hide that money. And one of the friends she asked to help her hide it was Ashley MacArthur. And Ashley agreed. She agreed to look after $35,000, just under $35,000. And she said that she would put it in a safety deposit box in her bank until Taylor decided she needed it back. But whilst that was happening, the investigation had started, and it wasn't long before the courts told Taylor that she needed to replace that money immediately or she would go to prison. So Taylor told Ashley that she needed the money back. But every time she and Ashley would make plans to go and retrieve that money from the safety deposit box, Ashley would either flake out, she would cancel last minute, or she'd make an excuse as to why she couldn't go at that particular time. On the 7th of September 2017, Taylor and Cassandra went out on a dinner date. And it was at that dinner date that Taylor confided in Cassandra that she was pretty stressed about the money situation. She said that Ashley wasn't giving her the money back and she didn't really know why. She said that this had happened a couple of times and she tried to arrange to meet to go and get the money, but Ashley would always cancel last minute or flake out and just say she wasn't available then. Cassandra asked what she was going to do, and Taylor said she was actually seeing Ashley tomorrow, the next day, on the 8th of September, and they had plans to go and get the money out then. While she was with Cassandra at dinner, she actually texted Ashley just to confirm that they were still on for the next day for the morning to go and get the money. And to her relief, Taylor received a text back from Ashley and she said that, yeah, they were on for tomorrow, they would go get the money out of the safety deposit box and it would all be sorted. So on the morning of Friday the 8th of September, Cassandra and Taylor were stood outside of the house that they at this present time shared together, and they were waiting there. Cassandra was having to rush off to work quite soon, but just before she left for work, she saw Ashley come round the corner and park in the driveway in her car. She said goodbye to Ashley, she said goodbye to Taylor, and then Cassandra got in her car and made her way to work. A few hours later, Cassandra got a phone call and it looked as though it was Taylor calling her, but on the phone it wasn't Taylor, it was Ashley using Taylor's phone. And Ashley said that there'd been a change of plans. She said they'd decided to have a girls' day. Taylor was extremely stressed out about all the issues with her divorce and the money, and so they decided that they just needed to have a relaxing day. They were going to go up to the farm, and this was Ashley's family farm and it was in East Milton. And the plan was to go up there, ride the horses that were there, and then they would come back later on in the day. This was all a bit odd to Cassandra. They'd just had a conversation the previous evening about how stressed Taylor was about the money situation and how her main thoughts were on going and getting that money out and then coming back home. But Ashley reassured her. She said that Taylor just wanted to take her mind off of things and they were just going to have a nice day up at the farm, and she was sure that when Taylor returned home that evening she would be in a much better headspace and she'd be like her normal old self again. Later that night, Cassandra got a text saying, quote, "I'm not angry with you. I should have called but I just need to think. I'm just trying to get my life back on track." Cassandra was confused and she was also upset. She and Taylor were supposed to be in this together. They were in a relationship and they should be able to deal with stresses like this together. Although this was odd, it wasn't completely out of character for Taylor to do something like this. She had acted out like this in the past. As we know, she'd cheated on Cassandra before, and she was also known to have taken drugs in the past when she was stressed and felt like she couldn't deal with things. And so in this moment, Cassandra thought that perhaps Taylor was having another episode where she wasn't able to deal with her emotions and she was just trying to do anything to soften those and to sort of get through it. And Cassandra decided she did not want to deal with this. By this point, she'd had enough, and so she actually texted Taylor telling her not to come back. She said she was done and she needed some space and time away from her, and she didn't want her to return home. But even after Cassandra had sent those pretty harsh and to the point messages, she got no response from Taylor, not that night or the next day or the following day. And although she'd been angry initially, she was now just worried. And so on the 10th of September, Cassandra called the police department and she reported that her girlfriend had gone missing. But because it had only been less than 48 hours, the police said there wasn't really anything they could do at this point and to call back if she didn't return home. But by the Thursday, the 14th of September, Cassandra still hadn't heard from Taylor at all. This was incredibly worrying, and so she went straight back to the police department and filled in a missing persons report. Remember that Cassandra and Taylor are sharing a house at this point, so Cassandra was thinking, if she's not at home with me, where could she be? Where is she? Any anger that she'd felt by Taylor's previous actions was completely overshadowed now by her concern and worry for what might have happened to her. As part of that missing persons report, Cassandra gave the officers investigating it all of the information she knew, including the conversation that she and Taylor had had the night prior to her disappearance, and the fact that she was stressed about money and what had happened with Ashley MacArthur. Police brought Ashley in to ask her about the last time she'd seen Taylor. They knew from Cassandra's account of the last time she saw Taylor that she'd been with Ashley on the last day that anyone had seen her or heard from her. Ashley said that after the time they spent at the farm, she had dropped Taylor outside of her house. She said Taylor was going to order an Uber and then go out for a beer, said she needed to blow off some steam. Ashley said she was a bit worried because she knew that Taylor had a, quote, drug habit, and with drug habits come suspicious people. She could be with anyone. Detectives investigating the case were suspicious of Ashley from quite early on. They knew that as soon as money is involved, anything can happen, and this was quite a large chunk. This was just under $35,000, and so they had to look into Ashley and see what might have happened to Taylor or what she might know about the last time Taylor was seen. Ashley told the detective the same story she'd told Cassandra about the last time that she'd seen Taylor on that Friday when they went off together. She confirmed that she'd picked up Taylor, and then she said that they went to an address that Taylor had provided and picked something up. And she said that this was to do with Taylor's private investigating work. Ashley said that she then went to a petrol station before they headed to the family farm in East Milton. She said after that, they then went back to Ashley's house, and Ashley went outside, but Taylor didn't come in. She said she left Taylor outside because she said she was going to get an Uber and then go for a beer with some people that she knew. When Ashley came outside a little bit later on, she said Taylor was gone. The detective then asked if there were any other places, any other farms or areas of land that Ashley and Taylor had been to together that Ashley had not yet disclosed to officers. Ashley said that later on that day, she had gone to another farm, one that her auntie owned, but she said she didn't have the name for it. The detective asked if she could get that name for them, and she said she didn't have it right now, but she would get it for them at a later time. The detective then went on to ask if she had a road name or anything that she would be able to help lead the officers to that area, and she said she didn't right now, but she would get them that information. But surprisingly, she never got them any information helping to lead them there. Obviously, the detective was pushing for this, but Ashley said that Taylor had never even gone to that farm, that place that she'd gone to, her auntie's farm, and so that information probably wasn't relevant at all after all. She also dropped into the conversation that because of Taylor's drug history, they should probably check treatment centres. Meanwhile, the team investigating the disappearance of Taylor had managed to get hold of her phone records, and they showed that she had never been anywhere near the farm in East Milton that day. Those phone records did, however, show that Taylor's phone had been over 30 miles away across the other side of the county. That exact location was Britt Road Family Farm, and this farm was a farm that belonged to Ashley's family. In fact, it's interesting that Ashley just forgot the name of the farm because she's named after it. Her full name is Ashley Britt MacArthur. Her middle name is the name of the farm. When Ashley was questioned on this, she told the detective that, oh yeah, she did remember now what they were talking about and that they had gone to this other farm. But she said that they'd only gone there because Taylor had wanted to go and pick up her lockbox. She said she'd never told officers this because Taylor had made her promise not to say anything. By this point, the investigation has been upgraded. It's classed as a homicide investigation. So this woman, Ashley's best friend, has gone missing. The investigation is at a homicide level, and she still decided not to say anything about this second location they've gone to just because Taylor asked her not to. But it didn't matter so much what Ashley was saying in that interview room, because at the same time, there were 3 search warrants that were being executed at different locations, and one of those locations was where Taylor's phone had pinged over at the Britt Family Road farm. It was on the 19th of October 2017 that detectives went to this area and they found the skeletal remains of Taylor. The remains had been wrapped in a hammock and then covered with potting soil and concrete. And it was clear that Taylor had died from a gunshot wound. Ashley was officially arrested, but even though Taylor's body had been found on her property and she admitted to taking her there on the day, she still pleaded not guilty. And so during the next few weeks and months, the prosecution started to prepare their case and it went to trial. The prosecution started their case by calling Taylor's ex-husband Jeff to the witness stand. The goal was to clear him. Jeff's alibi was solid and it put him hundreds of miles away. Jeff went on to then say that on the 9th of September 2017, so the day after Taylor had gone missing, their son Drake had called Taylor's phone. This was quite normal, he said, especially when the mum and son weren't together, but she hadn't answered. Jeff found this odd. He was incredibly concerned that he hadn't heard from her and neither had Drake, and so he decided to try and get in contact with her on Facebook, but after sending her a message he received no reply, and so he decided to go through her friends list and try and contact some people that he'd heard her talk about to see if she was with them. One of the friends he messaged was Ashley MacArthur. She told Jeff that she had last seen Taylor while she was standing outside carrying 2 backpacks and a significant amount of money, and she had apparently said to Ashley that she was nervous about the upcoming trial, the trial to do with the money that she'd stolen. Then the prosecution presented the evidence of the phone records showing that Ashley was at Britt Farm. And then they also showed that the day after Taylor had gone missing, her phone actually pinged from a cell tower in Alabama. And they cross-checked this and they realised that Ashley had actually been at a wedding in Alabama on that same day. And so obviously that indicates that Ashley had Taylor's phone with her at that time. The prosecution presented CCTV footage that showed Ashley at a store nearby to where the Britt family farm was. And at that store, she's tracked on CCTV buying potting soil and fast-setting concrete. And remember that when Taylor's body was found, she was covered in potting soil and concrete. But the crime scene photos that were taken on the day Taylor's remains were found actually show that the concrete isn't a fine dust, which is the concrete that Ashley had bought from that store, and they actually got one of the store workers to testify that this wasn't the concrete that Ashley had bought. This was a huge blow to the prosecution's case, but there were a couple of explanations as to why this might have happened. For example, Ashley might have just used a different kind of concrete that she had lying around the farm. Perhaps she'd bought a different kind of concrete another time, or she just found it in her family farm. Or the other explanation is simply that it was the worker error in terms of their testimony. Either way, they had quite a task on their hands now, trying to prove that Ashley was guilty beyond reasonable doubt. And that's when they brought in a witness to take the stand. This witness was a man, and it was a man that Ashley had been cheating on her husband with. This man owned a local bar in town, and he testified that he and Ashley had been having an affair for quite a while. He confirmed that Ashley spent a lot of money on him. In fact, he had just recently been given a motorcycle from Ashley. Where she'd got the money from for those kind of expenses, she couldn't say, but the prosecution alleged that Ashley had spent the money that Taylor had given her to look after, and she knew that it was only a matter of time before Taylor found out, and then she could be liable perhaps to go to prison. So she knew she had to do something more permanent. The man that Ashley was having that affair with actually testified in court that he and Ashley had been having a conversation sometime after Taylor had disappeared, and Ashley had said that Taylor had clearly just run off with her husband's money and, quote, they'd never find that bitch, she's gone. It was presented that whilst Ashley was being questioned by officers, they had asked her about a cashier check that she'd deposited with Taylor's signature on it. And the reason they'd asked her about that was because she'd deposited it whilst Taylor had been missing. Ashley did admit to having cashed that check. There was no way that she could deny it because she was actually caught on CCTV. But she said that Taylor had signed that check previously. Cassandra testified that after seeing that check, when officers presented it to her, she knew that that wasn't Taylor's signature and it was definitely a forgery. With regards to the money, the defense presented that Ashley and Taylor were actually going into business together, and they said that that cashier's check that was supposedly signed by Taylor was going into a joint bank account that they said both Taylor and Ashley could access at any time they wanted to. The prosecution, of course, disputed this, and they said that that money that Ashley is seen depositing isn't going into a joint account, it is going into Ashley's account that only Ashley has access to. They went on to say that there was no evidence linking Ashley to Taylor's murder, there was no murder weapon, and there was no eyewitness testimony. They also said that Ashley had back problems, and if she had moved a body, then the officers would have noticed that she was weak or injured in the days following that when they were talking to Ashley. Other than that, they didn't really have a whole lot. They really were relying on the lack of evidence proving beyond reasonable doubt that Ashley had done this. They kept stressing that this trial wasn't about whether Ashley was a good person or not. This wasn't about whether they liked her. This was simply about whether she was guilty of murder. And they're sort of right. There really isn't any physical evidence linking Ashley to the crime. There's no DNA, there's no fingerprints, and there's no murder weapon. But there is a hell of a lot of circumstantial evidence, and circumstantial evidence is evidence. Ashley had no explanation for why Taylor's body was found on her property at the location that she had admitted to visiting earlier in the day. Ultimately, Ashley was found guilty, and she was sentenced to 25 years in prison before parole consideration. Thank you for watching this episode of Red Rum. If you haven't already, you can check out our back catalogue of over 50 episodes. I wanted to recommend one at the end of this episode. It is an episode I posted a couple of weeks ago. It's about a Nazi survivor who was instrumental in the resistance and just an incredible woman who would survive the horrific Nazi concentration camps, only to go on to later be murdered on the London Underground in a seemingly unconnected attack. I'll link that in one of the boxes at the side, so check out that. Other than that, I will see you next week for another episode of Red Rum. Oh, and if you're not subscribed, please click that subscribe button. I would really appreciate it. Thanks, see you later. Bye.